Walram de Graaf, a landless but talented young Dutch steward, merely wants to acquire wealth and buy some titles to become a landed noble. But can his dynasty thrive in Crusader King 3's Hell Mode, where we use the most challenging possible rules? No restarts, backtracking, or replaying. All decisions are final. Other rulers receive unfair bonuses such as cheaper military, mercenaries, construction, and more loyal vassals, while we have painful penalties including less effective knights, harder hostile schemes, and disloyal vassals. Many other rulers will become powerful scourge conquerors, receiving even more bonuses, including extra gold, cheaper men-at-arms, faster army speed, faster siege speed, and an unlimited casus belli to conquer kingdoms. Not only will these rulers paint the map during their lifetimes, but they can pass these traits to all their heirs. Virulent plagues ravage the land, causing death to rulers, heirs, and even entire families. The threat of the Black Death is ever present, able to occur in any year and for an unlimited number of times. We can hold only a few counties directly, reducing our income in military, greatly weakening our rulers. And this hostile world has many other rule changes, all aimed at making our campaign as challenging as possible. Walram de Graaf begins with his camp where the ultimate liege of his Dutch homeland resides, in the capital of Lotharingia, the county of Bar. He quickly acquires a couple followers who also focus on stewardship. Walram then declares his company's purpose, scholarship, specifically focusing on stewardship and learning contracts. Walram seeks to unburden Christendom's lords of such petty tasks, while also making some gold for himself. Walram begins by visiting Bar's castle and engaging in every activity he can, approaching the town crier to learn of additional contracts, seeking free provisions from the grocer, entering the tavern to hear stories and potentially recruit followers, and scanning the castle for opportunities to train or recruit warriors who might also be skilled in the camp's purpose. Walram will stop by castles as often as possible, and will repeat these visits many times over the course of his travels. Walram then travels a few counties over to complete his first contract, tutoring a noble child. Walram successfully imparts 3 lessons to the young girl. Her father pays Walram nearly 100 ducats. His career is off to a promising start. From there, Walram undertakes a variety of contracts, always focusing on stewardship and learning where these are available. He helps to raise buildings, creates learned works, settles boundary disputes, conducts censuses, transcribes texts, collects taxes, and tutors more children. He prioritizes contracts he can perform quickly, so that he can swiftly collect his gold and move on to the next contract. Where contracts take more time, he selects a balanced approach between doing the job rapidly and doing it well, and waits to maximize his chances of success before completing the task. Walram uses these early funds to improve his camp, especially to construct buildings such as bartering grounds and housing for loyal scribes, which will further increase the money he earns from completing contracts. Walram soon acquires enough wealth and experience to found his own castle holdings, starting with the barony of Coucy. He improves the construction as much as possible, including by ordering the building of water wheels and castle fortifications. After this holding is complete, he will reap rich dividends, further increasing his wealth. Walram builds 4 such holdings in total, all located around Western Europe and contributing to his income. Soon, Walram had successfully completed so many contracts that his legacy was known throughout the land. Both commoners and nobles praised the talented steward for his skill in handling tasks. While gratified with this recognition, Walram had larger ambitions. As Walram's wealth and power grew, his thoughts turned to fulfilling his dream of purchasing land. This required taking account of the political situation, which he had so far ignored in his myopic pursuit of ducats. Much of Central and Western Europe was now ruled by King Sigurdur of Denmark, a mighty Viking scourge conqueror. In religious matters, Sigurdur followed a reformed version of Oshotru, instead of the Catholicism of Western European peoples, such as Walram. Walram resolved to travel to Sigurdur's capital of Sjælland, still located in Denmark, with the hope that he could purchase some land from the great king. But Walram was, frankly, disappointed with what Sigurdur had to offer. One county on the northern French coast bordered the scourge conqueror who ruled England and could be subject to attack. Other lands were tribal areas in the wilds of Scandinavia. Walram felt that his first option to become a landed noble had failed. After months of waiting in Sjælland to see if any better land would be available, Walram decided to travel back to his homeland of Holland, now also part of Sigurdur's massive realm. Holland was held by a Frenchman, and Walram initially believed he could obtain land by championing his native Dutch culture against this interloper. Walram did not satisfy the requirements to peacefully eject the Frenchman, and so began considering more martial avenues. While the Duke of Holland boasted a powerful military, neighboring Frisia was controlled by a weak ruler who was Norse, and thus again an alien in these Dutch lands. Walram had hired small contingents of Varangian veterans and Huscarls during his time in Denmark, and believed these forces could defeat the Frisian Duke. After completing more contracts and spending time in taverns and castles to hire powerful knights to improve his military, Walram was ready to strike. Walram initially thought he could start a war for Frisia by championing his Dutch culture. This option would have brought large numbers of Dutch men-at-arms to his side, but it also would have incurred the wrath of High King Sigurdur, who would be Walram's opponent in this culture war. As Walram could not possibly defeat the mighty scourge conqueror, he abandoned the option of championing his culture and instead simply attacked the Frisian Duke. The Duke was bankrupt, and his army consisted of 79 disgruntled peasants. Walram's Danish troops made short work of them and captured the Duke himself, swiftly winning the war. Winning this war had made the Duchy of Frisia independent, but Walram immediately swore fealty to Sigurdur. Exactly why Sigurdur allowed the Frisian Duchy to be conquered by straight warfare but not through championing the Dutch culture is a paradox that has puzzled future historians. Regardless, after 45 years of serving other nobles, Walram had finally fulfilled his dream of becoming landed himself, and he had over 10,000 ducats from his time as an adventurer that he could use to improve his realm. He acclaimed a mighty vanguard knight to lead his Danish troops into battle and increase the size of his army. He began constructing buildings in all of his holdings with a focus on trade ports that his fellow Dutchmen could use to increase their wealth and power. He also set the foundations for new cities and Christian churches to fully develop his lands. Despite his liege's pagan faith, Walram vowed to remain Catholic and appoint Catholic nobles to any titles he acquired. Having tasted the true power of being a landed lord, Walrum's appetite quickly grew. He sought to become king of Frisia, ruling all his fellow Dutchmen. During his travels as an adventurer, Walrum had learned many skills, including how to use sanctioned loopholes in the feudal title system to buy claims. He put this skill to work against neighboring vassals, purchasing claims on their titles and then absorbing their lands. Soon, Walrum fulfilled his goal of becoming king. But Walrum was not sated. He began looking at nearby territories ruled by weak lords whose lands he could conquer. Using his small but high-quality army, he acquired duchies in Lotharingia and France. Yet all was not well. Now in his late 60s, Walrum was increasingly infirm. Worse, he had an accident where he slipped into a lake and nearly drowned. Surely the cold hand of the Reaper approached. Undoubtedly, Walrum would soon pass into heaven. Or at least that is what Walrum, his family, and his vassals all thought. While he still lived, Walrum continued to expand his realm. Soon, he conquered enough territory to declare himself King of France. He put an elective succession law on the title so that all his kingdoms would go to a single heir, a tactic he would repeat for future kingships. Soon he controlled Lotharingia and Germany as well, ruling a mighty realm encompassing all of Western Europe. In just a few decades, the man who had once been a simple scribe was arguably the second most powerful ruler in Europe, only behind his current liege, Sigurdur's son. And yet Walrum just kept going. Walrum kept going in other ways as well. He now had several children with wives who had predeceased him. And then at the age of 87, his new wife bore him a son whose genius was manifest even at birth. Walrum could only laugh. He would have loved to have this prodigy lead his dynasty one day, but to raise him to adulthood, Walrum would need to live to be 103. Surely that was impossible. Walrum had already lived far longer than anyone could have expected. Yet hope springs eternal, and Walrum decided to personally tutor this infant named Roloff. Soon larger political events consumed Walrum's attention. High King Sigurdur and his son had conquered a massive realm encompassing almost all of Europe, named Germania. When the son died, Walrum and many other vassals expected another Sigurdur to assume Germania's rule. But that was not to be. Somehow, a man from another dynasty took the throne, perhaps through manipulating Germania's elective succession system. While this man called himself a conqueror, his forces were quite weak, nothing like the massive armies assembled by the Sigurdurs. Indeed, the new liege's forces were much weaker than Walrum's own, creating rebellious thoughts in the ever-ambitious former scribe's mind. Walrum owned so much of the land comprising Germania that he could claim his liege's title. He did so and immediately formed a faction to install himself on Germania's throne. When the faction reached maximum discontent, it had nearly triple his liege's military power, and so Walrum pressed his demands. His liege refused, setting off a surprisingly brief war. Before Walrum could prevail, the liege somehow lost a separate subjugation war to an even worse ruler, some spindly, shy nobody from the Baltics. This new liege was not even a scourge conqueror, and so would have little hope of keeping the massive Germanian empire together. There was no question what Walrum would do. He created another faction, asserting his claim to Germania's throne, and pressed his demands at the first opportunity. Perhaps because of the number of wars and other factions he faced, his new liege accepted these demands. Walram was now Emperor of Germania. While he was somewhat disappointed he did not obtain even more land, Walram now ruled a sizable independent realm in Western, Central, and Northern Europe. Walram, who had always stayed true to his Catholic faith, quickly used these new lands to restore the Holy Roman Empire. Thus, at the extraordinary age of 97, fully infirm and completely blind, the man who had started by tutoring a count's daughter became the secular ruler of Christendom. Walram would spend his next years touring and improving his new realm. Just a few years later, what had once seemed impossible occurred. With Walram still alive at 103, his youngest son, the genius child prodigy Roloff, came of age. Walram immediately elevated Roloff to be his co-monarch and voted for Roloff to be heir of all his elective titles. Walram's older sons would be compensated with various duchy titles upon succession. Walram could now rest. He had accomplished more than could reasonably be asked of any man in this hostile world of scourge conquerors, powerful opponents, and plagues. While engaging in some minor wars, he spent most of his remaining life building up the empire's treasury with the intent of making Roloff's succession as smooth as possible. Other people, both highborn and low, could only marvel at Walram's unbelievable age. Did his longevity come from his years as an adventurer, through witchcraft and black magic? Had he been chosen by God to restore the Holy Roman Empire and free Christendom from heathen rulers? Or was he simply lucky? But no man is actually immortal. At 108, Walram's health took a sharp turn for the worse. At 109, Walram could sense that he was finally approaching his heavenly reward. Then at 110, Walram passed. Roloff now ascends to be Holy Roman Emperor. He is like his father in many ways, a well-educated steward who is diligent, temperate, patient, as well as gregarious. But in addition to his father's qualities, he also is a well-publicized genius, adding to the pressure to live up to his father's legend. Roloff began his reign by gazing upon the journal his father wrote. This book contained much precious knowledge that would allow Roloff to rapidly advance in stewardship and the art of ruling. While Roloff faced some factions upon his succession, he enforced proper feudal relations by granting counts to their de jure dukes, and used the massive gold reserves left by his father to pay off key vassals. The factions quickly melted away. After his coronation, Roloff traveled to university. He completed his studies by reaching the highest levels of stewardship as a golden sovereign, a status his illustrious father had never attained. Roloff spent years hosting activities, touring his realm, and strengthening the empire. He was then suddenly attacked by the Scourge Conqueror exalted warlord of Al-Angelus, who controlled Iberia. This conqueror sought territories in the far north of Roloff's realms in Sweden, for some reason that has been lost to historians. To obtain these territories, the Scourge Conqueror landed in southeastern Aquitaine. Truly, the strategies of such an exalted martial mind are beyond the understanding of mere mortals. Roloff quickly raised his army and sought to supplement it with mercenaries. But Roloff made a fatal error. He raised his armies too close to the enemy. His opponent rushed in and crushed the Holy Roman Empire's assembling forces. Roloff was never able to recover from this initial mistake and lost the war to the rapidly sieging Scourge Conqueror. With a truce with Al-Angelus now in effect, Roloff sought to regain his lost honor and reputation by launching a holy war for the large kingdom of Poland. The war was successful, and Roloff handed out Poland's large duchies to his relatives. Despite this victory, the threat of Al-Angelus was never far from Roloff's mind. Having mastered many stewardship skills, he now switched his lifestyle focus to martial to improve his chances against the Iberian warlord. When the truce expired, Roloff became concerned that if he launched any new offensive wars, Al-Angelus would use that as an opportunity to attack the Holy Roman Empire. Thus, the two realms settled into a standoff. Roloff became fascinated by potential innovations that could increase the size of his armies and encouraged his scholars to do all they could to achieve this goal. Roloff used this standoff to engage in a host of activities, including a lengthy pilgrimage to Jerusalem while visiting many points of interest along the way. As he prayed in Jerusalem itself, the dreaded bubonic plague swept across the world. Just after he left Jerusalem and was traveling across Egypt before starting his long voyage home, Roloff caught the almost always fatal plague. Roloff summoned his priest and gave what he believed would be his final confession. And yet, the de Graaf's family reputation for remarkable health and longevity held firm. Roloff became one of the few to recover from the Black Death. After defeating several peasant rebellions and working to restore order to his realm in the Black Death's wake, Roloff followed up on rumors of a legendary white boar. When the animal was sighted in Bourbon, Roloff organized a hunt, despite the remaining traces of bubonic plague in his territories. Roloff tracked down the animal and personally drove his spear through its heart. Forever after, the animal's pelt would adorn the Holy Roman Empire's throne room. For many years, Roloff was confined to improving his empire internally, too concerned about the Lion of Al-Angelus's reaction if he were to send his army beyond the Holy Roman Empire's borders. But then news came that Al-Angelus was tied up in numerous wars. Moreover, a new Scourge Conqueror had arisen in Croatia. The last thing Roloff wanted was to face Scourge Conquerors on two different borders. With Al-Angelus occupied, Roloff attacked Croatia, seeking to strangle this new threat in its cradle. Roloff personally led his armies to victory, marking his first offensive war and first win against a Scourge Conqueror. Then the message that Roloff had long awaited arrived. The line of Al-Angelus was dead. His realm had split between two of his sons. While both claimed the mantle of Scourge Conqueror, they were inexperienced. Once again, Roloff moved to extinguish these dangers before they could grow deadlier. Roloff attacked the brothers in succession. In both wars, he personally led his armies in sieging down Iberian holdings. In each war, he also would lead his forces into victorious battles against these supposed Scourge Conquerors. Roloff won both wars, taking his opponent's territory, but more importantly inflicting a devastating riposte to each of these brothers' proclamations that they were invincible victors capable of conquering vast swathes of territory. One brother defeated the other, resulting in a unified Al-Angelus once again. The victorious brother then attacked a ruler in Norway who was a Holy Roman Empire tributary for reasons lost to history. Despite their truce, this attack on a tributary gave Roloff an opportunity to join another war against Al-Angelus, which he promptly did. Roloff sieged through Al-Andalusian territory and imposed another defeat on the would-be Scourge Conqueror. No longer fearing an attack from Al-Angelus, Roloff conquered various lands bordering his realm, but as soon as the truce was up, he looked again to attack Al-Angelus. Their ruler would be more formidable this time. He was still a Scourge Conqueror, able to give his troops an advantage in battle far beyond what any normal ruler could provide. Moreover, he had reached the highest levels of military education to become an exalted warlord, such that he now understood how to move his armies even faster and siege down baronies even quicker. And he had a massive treasury of nearly 50,000 ducats he could use to hire mercenaries. But Roloff would not be deterred, especially since Al-Angelus was involved in 2 other wars. Roloff attacked Al-Angelus once more, paying 3 companies of the best swords for hire to supplement his armies. Roloff again sieged through his opponent's territories, finally catching the exalted warlord's army. Roloff personally led his troops to win a decisive battle. Having been defeated by Roloff again and again, Al-Angelus's ruler could no longer be considered a Scourge Conqueror. The realm of Al-Angelus that once dominated Roloff's thoughts, actions, and strategy had been laid low and would never recover its former greatness. With the Holy Roman Empire's greatest nemesis now supine, Roloff went on a conquering spree. Like his father, Roloff was blessed with remarkable longevity, and he brought long experience to each battle. His wars culminated in reclaiming Jerusalem for Christendom. Having repeatedly defeated Scourge Conquerors and now able to claim new lands for the true Catholic faith wheresoever it pleases, the Holy Roman Empire stands alone as the most powerful realm in the world. All Catholics owe their sincerest gratitude to the 2 members of the de Graaf family who led them from pagan oppression into absolute dominance. The wealth the de Graafs acquired as landless stewards, spent on building their domain and armies, and then carefully husbanded until it was needed to defeat their enemies, epitomizes how gold is in fact the sinews of war and empire. I hope you enjoyed this CK3 Hell Mode story. It's based on videos showing my full unedited gameplay where I go into more detail on game mechanics and decision making. Please click the top link to watch that series, and please click the bottom link to subscribe for more CK3 Hell Mode videos.